What's up guys, my name's Liam. Today we're going to be taking a look at the brand new Asus ROG Keris 2 Ace. This is their brand new Ergo offering. Has an 8K polling rate when using it in wired mode, 4K wireless, but is this going to be the perfect gaming mouse for you? Let's check it out. Before we get started, I did want to let you know that this was actually sent out to me, but everything you'll be hearing in this video today is going to be my own words and my own opinions. Included inside the box, you do get user manuals, a bunch of documentation. It does also come with grips. I've already put some of the grips here on the sides, and then it's got them for the triggers. It does come with these smaller skates, and then it also includes an extra set of the bigger skates. It's got some stickers, a USB-C cable. Here's a little bag that is included, and then it does come with the receiver. This is the dongle adapter, and then it also includes the booster. So briefly, how this receiver setup works is if you were just to use this, like say if you plug this in a laptop or something like that, the maximum polling rate that this is capable of is just the 1000 hertz polling rate, and you can use it in conjunction here with just the dongle adapter. If you're looking to get the 4K wireless or the 8K wired mode, you do have to also use this booster. On the bottom, real simple stuff over here, you do have your power button. If it's in the middle, it's off. Switch it down to use the receiver. This also does have a Bluetooth mode, so if you're to switch it up, you can use this with Bluetooth. Up here, you do have your DPI button, and then right down here, they do actually have a pair button. You can store the 1K receiver down here if you wanted to do so, if you're to travel around. And I really do like the skate design. They do have this bigger set skate design on here, so you can use dot skates, the corner skates, or you do have real estate for the bigger skates as well. And I am really enjoying these skates. They are 100% PTFE. Every type of pad I was using them on, they seem to work great and have really smooth glide. For the surface of this thing, it does feel a little bit unique. They are using this bio-based material, supposed to be better for the environment. It feels pretty similar to a PBT style plastic, and it is a little bit chalky on here, so you do have a little bit of texture. It does have these grooves on the side, kind of similar to the ROG Harp Ace, and there's a bit of a texture there. I'll go ahead and rub my fingernails up against it so you can see these little dips. And the way I play, I kind of am fidgety and I kind of move my fingers up and down the mouse quite a bit. So that texture there, it was kind of slightly bothering me a little bit. I wasn't so much of a fan of it, but I did just go ahead and throw the grips on here, and the grips feel pretty good. They do smooth it out, and you don't feel any of that type of texture on there. And they do add a little bit more of additional grip compared to the plastic style filling surface does. This also features their new ROG optical micro switches in them, and they just kind of fall right in line with some of the other optical offerings out there. They do have a little bit more of a hollow sound to them. I'll just do a quick throw up here with the Razer switches. I do feel like the implementation on these is slightly a little bit heavier, but not that much of a difference. The pre-travel, there's just a slight bit, but I do feel like the pre and post travel on this unit is pretty solid. If you do come up to the front of the switch, you do get more bend, and you can actually come down here and touch the base. But the left to right play on here, there's just a slight bit of movement, nothing too bad. As I was using this in game, I didn't notice any type of that movement at all when I was tracking with it. But the click implementation, it did feel really solid. I found that no matter how I gripped it or where I clicked it from, it was very consistent. One of the things that Asus mentioned about the development of these mice, they do a lot of testing on these switches, and when they're putting in the mouse, they do make sure that the left and right click are within 5 grams of one another of actuation force, so they don't deviate from one another too far. And as I'm going back and forth and testing them out, they do feel really similar to one another. The scroll is a little bit on the smaller side, and it does have a little bit of that lower profile. As you can see there, it's kind of narrow. I do like the rubberized grip on the top. Seem to work good for me. The steps are very smooth. You do have defined steps there, a little bit on the lighter end, and the center scroll click does feel right in line with where it should be. A little bit on the stiffer end, but really easy to spam and use while in game. With the side buttons, they do have this design where the front is just a little bit smaller. As I was gripping this, I did feel like they were lined up right where they should be, and I feel like the side buttons on here feel really good. It's pretty consistent no matter where you click it from. You do get just a slight bit of pre-travel from the front all the way to the back, but it is very minimal. You do get a nice click, and then it has a solid stop for the post travel. There is a very minimal to almost no side-to-side play on here. So all around these side buttons, they do feel really good. So everything about the build quality on my unit has felt very solid. The shell itself, there's no type of bending, creaking, or flexing, anything like that. So let's go ahead and drop a sound test so you can see what everything sounds like. For the weight and balance, everything feels right in line with where it should be. Real solid front to back. Even the left to right feels really good. And on my scale, even with the grips, I got this coming in at 54.9 grams. The software, even though it's easy to use, it did kind of take me a while to get set up. It was just a little bit of a pain, especially since I do have all these other ROG products. Luckily, I did have the Armory crate already installed on my computer. But once you get everything set up, I did have to update this mouse a couple of times. You can just simply click on this tab right here. It does easily allow you to adjust settings like the DPI, the polling rate. Once you do have this set up with the booster, I did find that it was already automatically configured at 4K, so that was nice to see. There is no debounce setting option in the software, but Asus does ensure with these optical switches that you're going to be getting the lowest click latency at all times. But these are the settings that I've been using in the software that have seemed to work best for me during my gameplay. For the performance, they're using their own Aim Point Pro sensor, and they really put a lot of emphasis on the amount of research and development that went into configuring this properly. They tested it out on every type of surface out there to ensure that you're going to be getting the best tracking possible. So they even made sure that it was working perfectly with glass pads and everything like that. The entire time that I was using it, I was A/B testing it on as many different surfaces as I could. I never had any issues with it tracking, and it seemed to work perfect on everything that I threw at it. They're also using their own SpeedNova wireless technology, and in my experience using a lot of these different 4K, even 8K wireless mice, one of the biggest issues is the frequency interference. So they've really put an emphasis on avoiding any type of frequency interruption when you use this. If you have multiple devices in your room, or if you're to move it further away from the receiver to ensure you're still going to be getting the optimal performance when using this. I didn't notice any type of interference or interruption, so I would say all around that the tech that they put in this really is working great for me. And with the wireless technology, they put a lot of emphasis on focusing on the power usage and the battery life. At the 1K polling rate, this is estimated to be around 107 hours of use. I did try hooking this up to my XLAT to benchmark it myself, and unfortunately this is not working in conjunction with the XLAT right now. It was not registering the mouse. So I would recommend checking out House's channel when he drops a video on this. I'm sure he'll be using the LDAT and probably be able to pull some numbers from this thing. Asus themselves, they are reporting that it does have a 0.6 millisecond click latency, and if that is the case, it is falling right in line with all the other top performers out there. I personally have been really enjoying this shape myself. This kind of falls right in line with all the other size 2 or medium style ergos that are out there on the market. The one thing I do kind of feel like sets this thing apart is I do kind of feel like it is a little bit flatter back here and has a little bit less of a hump than coming down here on the bottom. It does kind of flare out quite a bit aggressively in the rear back here, I feel like, but it doesn't have too steep of a curve in here. It kind of has a flatter feeling coming from here to the front, even though it does kind of flare out more there towards the front. But it does also have these little finger grooves up here. They're a little bit on the flatter end. So everything about the shape of this and size of it, I have been enjoying it. And even though this is a medium style size mouse, I do kind of feel like with this flatter profile in the rear here, it does kind of make it feel a little bit on the smaller end in the hands. But let's go ahead and throw it up against some of the competition out there so you can see what I'm talking about. First off, one of the closest comparisons that come to mind for me, which is everything about the size and shape of this mouse. Let's throw it up against the Pulsar Xlite V3. This is the medium size 2. Taking a look at these next to one another, you can see how they look incredibly similar in the overall scale of them. But coming down to the bottom, as you can see what I'm talking about here, with this flare out in the bottom, I do feel like the curve and the flare out on the back of the Xlite V3 does feel a little bit less aggressive there, but coming from the mid to the front, the overall width of these, they are pretty close to one another. Here's a look of them from the rear with the curve profile from the top left going down to the right side. So finally, when looking at both these from the side, one of the differences, as I was trying to explain to you guys, I do kind of feel like there's a bit more of a hump feeling right here when you're holding this in the hands. So this part of the mouse, I kind of feel like fills up your hands a little bit more, where over here on the Asus, it does just feel a little bit flat. So as you're holding this, it does at the top kind of make it feel like it's a little bit smaller to me. Next, we'll look at the Pwnage StormBreaker. The Keris 2 does feel just a little bit wider in the hands, as you can see down here. Same thing, a little bit wider back here on the rear. And even in the middle, it also does feel a little bit wider as well when I put them together. But coming over to the rear, here's what the Ergo profile on them looks like. And then this is kind of the same situation here. I do kind of feel like this hump up here. On the Pwnage, it's just a little bit more aggressive. You do feel a little bit more of it back here as well, where it feels a little bit flatter over here on the Keris 2. But the scale of these aren't too far apart from one another. Next up, when throwing up against the Razer DeathAdder V3 Pro, I do feel like all around that the Razer DeathAdder V3 Pro does feel a little bit bigger of a mouse than the Keris 2. It feels wider in the middle portion, even though it does kind of have a little bit wider on the left and right over here towards the rear. Everything about the height of the DeathAdder V3 Pro and the hump does feel more aggressive, and it just makes it feel like a bit of a larger mouse to me. All right, and finally we'll be looking at it next to the Lamzu Thorn. I do kind of feel like the width of both of these is pretty similar to one another. The Thorn does have kind of these aggressive flares down here towards the rear. Same thing with the Keris 2 Ace. I do feel like this curve profile is more aggressive though on the Thorn. It kind of just feels a bit flatter on the Keris 2 Ace. And then coming over to the rear, looking at the curve profile going from the top left down to the sides. The absolute biggest difference between both of these is on this Thorn, you do have a much more aggressive hump over here in this area to the rear that fills up your hands a lot more, where on the Keris 2 it just feels much more flat. And when you're holding these in the hands at the top, it does make the Keris 2 feel like it's a bit of a smaller mouse. Alright guys, so that about wraps things up on the Asus ROG Keris 2 Ace. I truly have been really liking this thing a lot. I really like all the design choices about it, the shape, it feels great. It kind of fits my hand size perfectly. I always say that shape is king on here, so I really am liking that a lot. Obviously, Asus puts a lot of development and research in their products. The performance of this feels incredibly top tier. All the specs on it feel fantastic. The sensor, everything about it, the weight feels great. So I would definitely say that this is a top performer and one of my favorite ergos that's out there right now on the market. So definitely, if it's something that you're interested in checking out, I would absolutely recommend looking into it. It is coming in at a little bit of a higher price, $159.99, but it should have good availability on it when it releases. All right guys, so if you have any questions, I feel like I left anything out, please let me know down in the comments below. If you've enjoyed watching this video and are interested in seeing more videos like this in the future, please drop this video a like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.